Hey, everybody, this is Vince Desi from Running with Scissors. Thanks for tuning in to Steam World. Go Postal. Go Steam World.
It's the Scene World podcast, and holy God, I'm back.
Nice. I mean, you have been back in the future already, but that is another podcast interview.
Yes.
Anyway, nice to have you back. Right. So in a minute, anyway,
Yes.
minute, we will be talking. I will be talking to our latest Scene World staff member, Devon, aka Rhakimndar. And Rhakimndar, you probably heard of him because he did our The Settlers New Allies review, which was pretty good, I think. And it was pretty balanced as a review. One of the few, if not the only ones that reviewed the German game series.
So you caught me off guard. You caught me off guard because that's not the podcast I thought we were doing an intro for.
Well, that's the one we are doing intro for.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Anyway, you interrupted me. I wanted to say, so Rhakimndar is actually our latest staff member, and he did the review of the Settlers New Allies that was first cancelled,
right?
And then surprisingly released a year later with 2 days notice in advance, so no publication could do review in time. So also we were delayed with our review because of that. So that's also a way of avoiding bad press.
Yeah, you could say that.
For release. I think his review was pretty balanced, so I was very glad for that. And it's one of the few, if not the only review on YouTube from an American reviewing a German game series. So that's
The Settlers was German?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was German by the German game studio Blue Byte Software.
I admit that I have never played The Settlers.
Well, obviously, because they're not German.
But I mean, it would have been available in the U.S. too, I would imagine.
Yes, of course. Yeah, sure.
I just never. Yeah. That was a 64 game? Because my brain wants to say it's Amiga.
It was Amiga and PC. And on the Amiga, it was special because it was the first game that allowed playing with two on the PC with two mice simultaneously. Right, and that was unheard of for the PC.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Amiga, it's no big deal. But on the PC, really not very common.
Yeah, right.
So it was one of the, if not the first game to allow simultaneously playing of two players. Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
I remember earlier games than that. When did Settlers come out?
I think it was 93.
Okay. I remember earlier games than that.
When did the Settlers come out for the PC?
First game in the series was released in 1993 for Amiga Games console and PC.
Thank you. Alexa, stop. Yeah,
you're so polite to her.
She
start playing Thank You by Dido.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm amazed that I picked that song out.
You are welcome. So
I'm amazed I picked that song out over the little, because you could barely. It was just like, but I was like, I know that song.
Anyway, you heard it. 93 is correct.
Okay, so I remember
released
games
on the PC and the Amiga game console.
Yes.
Not that the Amiga was a game console, but
this
never
is
mind.
not a console. This is a full-fledged computer box. I remember games earlier on the 64 where you had 2 players and not, obviously, 2 joysticks is easy enough to do, but there were games where one person would use like the left half of the keyboard and the other person would use the right half of the keyboard.
I know.
There was even a game on the Mac called Meteor Storm, and I believe it is now available on iOS and Android. I might be making that up. Where it was the same thing. You could have 2 players, but you controlled it with the keyboard. So you'd have, especially if you had like a laptop, like you're like, like fumble, and it was cool because you could like, you could like knock the other. It's not a competitive game. You're supposed to be helping each other, but you could totally like knock the other guy's hand off.
Anyway, we are getting off the rails. So we will be talking to Devin about the enjoyment of video games by looking at it rather than playing it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of games.
Anyway, one thing you mentioned, mouse support. Yeah. Interesting thing is Lemmings for the C64, which was also the last game ever released for the original commercial market.
As you've said many times.
Many times, yeah. It was also the last commercial game Jeroen did the music for.
Ever? Ever? Last commercial game ever?
Yep. Yeah, for the C64.
For the C64. Not on any platform. Not on any.
No, for the C64.
I was gonna say that dude.
I mean, for the core gaming market. Anyway, interesting thing is, despite there are many clones for the 1351 mouse, especially in Germany, and they are all told to be 100% compatible.
This is a real one.
Lemmings only works on the original.
I got
and to this day, I don't understand what's the difference between the compatible 1351 clone mice compared to the original, because they are supposed to be identical.
I would say probably because these games were coded to the hardware, right? And the mouse has got, it's the components of a mouse are essentially the same, no matter it's a ball, it's rollers, it's all that crap. But the controller chip that decodes the how often that wheel is spinning is different. And if they coded that game to the controller chip in the 1351, and the compatible ones use a different controller chip which works similarly, and for things like geos and whatnot, it's just a proportional mouse. Everything works great. But I mean, you can see that in like the Amiga mouse. The Amiga tank mouse looks just like the 1351, does not work as the 1351 because it's got a different controller chip in there. So they could have that. Yeah. So if they coded Lemmings to that chip, which is a thing that you would do back then, that could explain why your compatible mice didn't work.
Good point. I mean, that's the sole reason I still have this original tank mouse to play Lemmings, because it's not good playing it with the keyboard.
I love
and the joystick.
The tank mouse is my favorite mouse ever. I've got a USB version for the Mac and whatnot that I have. I wish I had a scroll wheel. There is a new version of the tank mouse being released that has like a scroll spot in between the buttons. It's not a wheel, it's like a sensor. We should put a link to that someplace. It looks pretty cool, but I like my original tank mouse and the mouse that came out with the C64. because it's just
No,
it's
no, that's not true. It came out with the
With the
Amiga Mini.
Yeah, with the A500 Mini. Yeah. Just because it's a simple mouse, and I always loved the shape of it and the way it looked and everything, and it's just good stuff. I can't find, tank mouses for the Amiga Go. So what I've got is I've got a one of these things. It's a knockoff mouse. It's the Alpha Data Mega Mouse. It's got supposedly higher DPI. It works. I like it, but I would kill to have a tank mouse.
Well, they are expensive, but you could get one from eBay.
I used to have, actually. I had one before I had the Amiga, and I used it for Funk Paint on the C64 because that would actually use Amiga mice.
I know there are other programs like Interpaint also supports an Amiga mouse. Yeah.
But stupid ass that I am, I sold it on eBay before I got my Amiga, and then when I got the Amiga, I was like, oh, why did I do that?
Anyway, other news, by the way.
Wait. I had other news for you right here to start off with that I thought you were going to love. Because this is right down your alley.
Okay.
Is that a guy named Andrea Cucchetto in Italy has managed to convert the Commodore 64 game Space Taxi, which I know is one of your favorites.
Yeah, it is.
To the Atari 8-bit.
I was super hyped when I got the original disc.
Yes, I know.
After 25 years of looking for it.
Yeah, this guy has and I'm sorry if I'm looking this way, but I've got a laptop over here with my information on it. It's for the Atari 8-bit, and it's got perfect. The graphics are great. It even does the digitized voices. Like the "Hey taxi," all that crap. Pad 5, please. There's a whole story about it, but yes, it now runs on any real 8-bit Atari machine with at least 48K of memory, like the standard Atari 800 and the 1200 XL, 600 XL with RAM expansion, 800 XL, which I used to have, 65XE and 130XE.
Nice. By the way, we also did a historical interview with John F. Kutcher, who coded the game.
I know. And it's like one of the top. It's one of the biggest games, like one of the most popular C64 games,
but super rare to find on original disc because Muse Software went out of business, bankrupt.
I had it on the original disc too long ago, and I don't have it anymore.
Well, I mean, you did a copy of the one I bought, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I mean, I had it before that. This is the thing that you can get. You can download a lot of games now, but they're mostly cracks. I don't want the cracked games. I want the original game.
Was like, man, loader. There is Space Taxi. I mean, I paid $60 for the disc alone, but hey, man, it's worth it. It's better than those rip-offs like 400 for the disc alone.
Right.
And it was like $60. That's not like. I mean, it's not super cheap, but it's not like I will sell my liver.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. You're not selling organs to find.
And it was actually in a working condition. I was like, wow, no read errors. Normally people on eBay are like untested, and then it's broken.
Yeah, no, because when it got to here, because he had it, because they wouldn't ship to Germany, so he had it sent to me first. And I did I made a copy of it, and then I made a D64 version of it, so that I could run it off the SD to IEC and swap it around and stuff. But yeah, I mean the disc was in immaculate shape, which was amazing for a game from 1984, I believe.
Well, good. There are people who are selling games who know how to storage discs.
I'll tell you, It smelled like it was from 1984. But
I know.
It played just fine.
I know. I have those discs from my grandfather from the same year.
Yeah,
and
that was in
they all
someone's
smell the
basement.
same.
That was in a basement for a while. That was
I know.
kind of mildewy.
But anyway, we
and
actually have a video from John Chatton about reading moldy discs and
Yeah,
rescuing its
that's
data.
right. That's
Hey
right.
man, we have so many knowledge in SceneWorld regarding space taxi and discs. We can put a lot of links to our own material
Yes,
for this intro.
absolutely. Another thing that I got here is that there was another dude whose name was Mike Brixius, and he's a YouTuber and a C64 guy. When he was a kid, in 1984, he started a game, an adventure game. I'm sorry, kind of like Ultima, that sort of thing. And it has sat around since 1984. He never finished it because, as many of us did when we were kids and we decided we would make a game, we'd get so far into it and then get stuck and give up and forget about it. Well, he recovered the code in 2023, and he is finishing the game that he started back in '84.
Amazing.
So that will be, hopefully, that'll be coming out at some point in the near future. I don't want to put a timetable on it because you're dealing with code from '84 that if I deal with code that I wrote last week, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Well,
so
okay.
So deciphering code you wrote in '84 is going to be rough, but that's a cool project. I love the fact that he's doing that, and I think that and from everything I see on from the pre-release, like what he's got done so far, it looks really, really good. Like it's got custom characters and it just looks like a professionally made 1984 game.
Just wanted to say, 1984 games look different.
They did, and I'd say even for a 1984 game, this is advanced. This looks more like an '86 game.
Yeah, I mean, there was this 85 for this period where most games still looked bad, but then there were games that really looked advanced, like Hot Wheels, which wasn't a bad game. And then
once games started taking the early games used the basic C64 like the tricks that the basic 64 could do. Once people started realizing the demo quality stuff that you could do with games, then things completely changed. Then you had smooth scrolling, and then you had high-res sprites overlaid over multicolor sprites and stuff like that, and multiplexing sprites, so you had more than 8 on the screen and things like that. But before that,
you did a different approach like NAS Ninja in '87, where you actually can look how the environment is built.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah.
But not using any fancy stuff.
Right. And that's there was a point where 84 was probably 85 was probably that transition year, because those 84 games were getting cracked, and then I think the game developers were like, holy crap, look what these dudes are doing in intros and stuff, and they started incorporating that into their own thing.
But 84 there wasn't so much cracking intros.
No, I'm not talking about 84. I'm not talking about 84. I'm talking about 85. I'm talking about 85 being that transition year where that started to happen.
The first cracking group that I remember and still being around having good intros was Triad, and that was 86.
When was Eaglesoft around?
I don't know. Wasn't it 87, 88? I think the Swedish people got it first. which would be Triad.
Hang on, I'm looking it up right now. EagleSoft Incorporated, CSTB. That's Canada. Is that Canada? Were they Canadian? No.
No, American.
Yeah, I thought they were American. EagleSoft. This says wrong. EagleSoft.
EagleSoft Incorporated.
ESI.
Canada, indeed. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so I was remembering it wrong. It was.
I always thought they were in the U.S. as well.
No,
but,
you see,
they were founded.
Things...
They were founded in 82.
82. But they didn't have intros in 82. Not that I believe. Not like super fancy.
Not
intros.
like not fantastic ones. But the first cracks I see for them listed are like 83, 84. But I mean, again, Lord knows what they looked like. It certainly wasn't the iconic EagleSoft intro.
The last release was 2004.
Yes, which is surprisingly recent.
Well, 19 years ago.
Yeah, but they seem to be disbanded now. There's nobody in the group.
Yeah, and now let's have a look at Triad.
Join us as we wander through the CSTB.
Sweden, Triad, as I said, yeah. And that was founded in 86, as I remembered.
Yeah, that was 86.
And they are still active.
Yes, they are. Moloch is still there. John. I love you, John. Oh, and he's listed as a coder and a cracker. He was just a supplier, but I guess they changed that.
Yeah, he helped testing Lost Realms of Mokazada, episode 2.
I wish I knew Moloch better. We've had our run-ins, but yeah, he's a character.
Yeah, he was there too. He coded the game, did music and graphics. Okay.
I was in a group with him. I was in RPG. He joined RPG about the same time that I did, and we had a meltdown shortly thereafter over a demo that we were going to do a parody demo of like pot of weed. Because the video games would always you always have those don't do drugs FBI warning thing on the beginning of the games, and we were going to do a whole thing on that, and a bunch of people got real angry about us doing a drug-based demo, which I mean freaking Forces of Evil did Grounds for Insanity, and there was another one that came with it. It was like Stoned or something like that, but it was so I don't understand. I think it was largely just kind of grandstanding, and he left. He was one of the people that left because of that demo, and it was never done. The demo was never completed. But yeah.
Anyway.
But he was in the group for a short time. I don't believe he ever did anything. I did a logo for him and misinterpreted what he asked for, and then from what I gather, like he just that was the end of our working relationship.
Wow.
And now I just goof around and try to include him in every news chapter that I write for any news mag, any disc mag, because he's a good sport about it, and just gives it back to me, which is fine.
Anyway,
getting back onto things.
Yeah. Well, other news, there was a recent update in June 12th by Quinnell God, our Fonzie from Watermelon.
Yes.
And he really kept his
How
promise.
many times did we talk to him? It was like twice, right?
Twice, yeah. So he does update his Kickstarter regularly as he promised. Though the latest news are, hello everyone, thanks for your patience. Attached are some news. We are still waiting for
We'll put a picture of this up on the screen just in case you want to read along at home.
Sure. So we are still waiting for the green light to transfer manufacturing to France. So things are moving out of China to France now for manufacturing. I mean, he almost got a $1 million funding with the Kickstarter. So I guess the raised manufacturing costs are not an issue anymore. Yeah. And some progress is being made in the chip shortage program.
Center yourself.
Well, I mean, shouldn't be a big issue with centering as the field of view is so big.
Yeah, but you're wandering off the screen again.
And also some tooling and plastic mold injection has been done for the Game Gear releases and the Grand Stick 4 release.
The what release?
Game Gear. There will be
the one after that. The one after that.
The Grand Stick 4 release.
The frig is a Grand Stick 4.
It's the arcade stick from Watermelon Games. There was a Grand Stick 3, and now they released an update, the Grand Stick 4.
Okay.
On the customer service side, we have successfully migrated to the new servers, and our website will be back in September.
That's
also, everyone will receive codes for the digital copy of Paprium. Also the ones that only got the physical copies backed because they want to have...
Did you ever get your copy of Paprium?
Of course.
Okay. Good game.
Perfect. I mean,
Awesome.
That is how we came about the deal with the interview.
I know.
We did the first English interview with him over the phone.
You called his mom.
Yeah, you know, that story that like nobody in France speaks English, right? Yes.
No, everybody in France speaks English. Nobody in France wants to speak English.
Well, his mom was nice about it. So
that if you go to France and French Canada, what the hell did I just say?
French Canadians.
Yes, French Canada is very similar. Where if you go and you talk English, they'll just sort of like brush you off. But I have learned that if you make an effort, right, if you try to speak French and do it badly, they will speak English to you and be nice because you tried.
Yeah, I know.
It's all respect. It's just respect. That's all it is. Which you know I get. You know I understand.
You know me. I'm like as you once put it, speak English to me or don't speak to me at all.
Yeah.
This is my attitude about it.
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, imagine, his mom is probably in her 60s or something, so she could as well.
How old is he?
32 or something, should be like that.
Okay.
So she could as well just pretended to not speak English, but you know. Anyway, so that's the news.
Nope, I got more. I'm not done.
Good.
The High 65, which is a Commodore 65 emulator, version 9.1 has been released for Windows. This is a high-level C65 emulator, much faster than Mess, which I have no idea what Mess is, but I will look into that for the next podcast. And even the original machine. So it makes it 2,840 times faster than Mess and 12,000 times faster than an actual Commodore 65.
Nice.
Which is preposterous. Can you imagine running a game at 12,000 times the speed that it should be running at?
Awesome.
That's like the super CPU on crack.
Awesome.
But yeah, so it's obviously a Windows application. There is a Amiga version, which is an April Fool's joke. If you go to the webpage. But yeah, so that's there. And finally, and I have to thank the Oasis BBS and Vintage is the New Old for gleaning a lot of this information from, because they're at the forefront of news stuff more so than I am.
Nice.
But Xander Mole, I hope I pronounced that right, has just released version 1.0 of his GeoUtools project, which is a growing suite of utilities to help use the Ultimate 2 Plus cartridge from within Geos, which is awesome because I have an Ultimate 2 Plus cartridge, and I use Geos on occasion, mostly as a backdrop. Right now I'm using Quantum Link as a backdrop just because I love the screen. But when you're using Geos, and this thing will let you, there's an auto exec that starts automatically on boot that sets the Geo system time based on the Ultimate 2's clock, which is something that I would friggin' love because I hate setting the time when I have to start up Geos. There's also GeoU Mount, which is a utility that can be used to swap and mount virtual disks on the U2 Plus cartridge. And GeoU Configure is a utility that can be used to set up configuration for the time and mount. So that's awesome. I plan to try that out as soon as I get half a minute to sit down and play with Geos some more. I love Geos. I love Geos. Geos as I just posted on Facebook a story about Geos, and if I might, I'll recount it here. Which was that back in 2017, my normal inkjet printer crapped out, and I needed to print things out immediately. Like I couldn't wait for a new printer from Amazon or anything. So I had three things I had to print out. One was a letter to refill my dog's prescription at a compounding pharmacy, which, okay, GeoWrite, aside from the geological letter rendering on GeoWrite, because I'm using the C64, not the 128 is a whole different story. Like GeoWrite on the 128
is like you have to scroll.
Yeah, GeoWrite on the 128 is glorious. On the 64, it is even with an REU and a 1581 and all that stuff. It's like it's not bad.
But it has WYSIWYG.
Yes, WYSIWYG. Yeah. So I printed that
and Geos has an MPS 802 driver that actually allows printing graphics despite it's a text-only printer.
I'm gonna get to that.
Because it's printing multiple lines.
Yes, I know.
And this way mimicking the graphic modes of the MPS 8.
I wrote a program that would print graphics with a daisy wheel printer using the period key long ago, and I wore through so many period keys. But that's beside the point. So okay, letter printed out. Okay, everything's good with that. The second thing was I made an eBay sale and I needed to print out the shipping label and the packing slip. Again, no problem. What I ended up doing was it's a PDF, so I converted the PDF to a GIF, and then I scaled that down to what the GeoPaint canvas size was, which I think is 640 by 720. And then I put it, I printed it, no problem. The packing part is right in the middle, so I just cut it out. Great. Third thing, took up the entire canvas. And I printed it, and I realized that my MPS 803, which is under a bunch of shit over there. Actually, no, it's right there. My MPS 803 is a 7-pin printer at 60 DPI, whereas Geo's is designed for 80 DPI. So it did not print out like the right an inch off the right side. So I cut, so I redid it. I scaled it again to the size of a GeoPaint thing minus that last inch. But the software again converted that GIF into a GeoPaint document that took up the whole thing. That I even tried to put blank space, but the software was too smart for me and realized it was blank space and just didn't convert that and just moved it out to the side. So I had no luck with that, and I ended up just having to go to freaking Staples and get a desk jet that I didn't want to print out my last thing. But again, 2 out of 3 wasn't bad. But I don't know how we got on the subject. But yeah, it was a thing. And anything to make Geos more usable is cool. I've got a 128 underneath that guitar thing covered. It's got a cover on it. I need to set it up. I've also got like the thing to convert to 80 columns on a VGA monitor. Nice. I really need to set that up and use that because the 128 was like, I loved that machine. And now I have just been using the 64 for I don't know how many years now because that was my very first computer, and
mine too.
It's my baby. I've got that 128. I got so much stuff for that. I've got the SynFX for that 128 sitting there waiting. I've got all this stuff sitting waiting for that 128 to be used, and I just haven't gotten around to setting it up because it's just more space on my desk that I don't have.
Right. Anyway, so.
Yes. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. We have an interview that I was not there for.
True.
I'll be there for the next one.
Perhaps depends.
I've been out of this to the point where I don't know who we've interviewed and when. Like I get the emails and I know what's going on to a certain degree, but then like it because I've been sort of taking a break and recentering and getting the color back in my face and stuff.
Right.
I haven't been.
Well, I will put you in the picture after the recording has finished.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, so let's jump to America.
I'm here already.
To Rhakimndar.
Yes.
Nice. Today we have another podcast guest, and today it's actually our latest staff member, Devon, also known as Rhakimndar. And you came in the picture because you were the one who did the Settlers New Allies review video for us.
Yep, that was me.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, yeah. So I found this probably was a bit unique for you because not many Americans had the pleasure to review a German game, actually.
Yeah, I honestly didn't even realize it was like kind of a German publisher until you sent it to me. I just thought it was just a pretty typical, here's an RTS game, go review it. And I started looking into it and I was like, oh, hey, that's kind of neat. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Sounds like you guys were as well, so that's good to know.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, the thing with the German press was either the press totally hated it and butchered it to the ground, or people were totally loving it for no reason. And you had kind of the middle ground, like the good, the bad, and didn't really,
I tried to be as objective as I could. I did
Exactly.
enjoy some aspects of it, like I mentioned in the review, and then of course I'm not I hate microtransactions to death, so I'm gonna call them out for it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I was really enjoying myself with some of the aspects of the game, and then the other aspects I was like, I'd kind of rather play StarCraft. So we'll see how it goes.
Right.
I tried my best to not just hate on it because I wanted to be a little, I wanted to be as objective as I could. So sounds
Yeah,
like
I
I got
mean,
that across.
also interesting fact is, since it's also originated on the Amiga, it was, to my knowledge, the first Amiga game to support two mice simultaneously to
Yeah, I think
play.
you mentioned that when we were talking about it a little bit.
Exactly. So, kind of a history there. Well, so let's first start with our usual question: how did you get involved into computers and games and stuff? How did that all start for you?
Well, mine started real early. I grew up with the Super Nintendo as a kid. My surprisingly enough, my grandmother was the one who was playing Mario with me. As you can kind of see, I got the Mario shirt rocking. Probably gonna go see the Mario movie after this podcast, so really excited for that. Yeah, she played. She she got the Super Nintendo for me. We were she would play it with me occasionally, but of course she was my grandma, so she was old and couldn't keep up with the controls at times. So she would just watch me after a certain point, and from then on, I just basically did nothing but play games for the rest of. I just kind of grew up with them at that point, and essentially played for the rest of the duration of my life. Um, so yeah, big Nintendo fan, of course. That's what I grew up with. That's what I remember, have fond memories of. And eventually, it was also an escape, as some people like to have it for. And so I used it as a means to, you know, get through tougher childhood moments and escape to worlds that were fantastical. And as I grew up, I wanted to jump into games more often, but then, various circumstances led me to academics, and I pursued other things. And then after that was finished, I finally came back to see how it works here, and just kind of, test my metal with the gaming industry and seeing what I could do with it.
Awesome. Yeah, wonderful. So we have a common friend, Alex McChambers, and that is
Yep.
actually how we met. Actually, he suggested you to us. So how did you meet him actually?
It was a little. I think okay. So I went to there's a convention called Techo that takes place in Pittsburgh, and in that convention, I went there with my friends and did some cosplay, did the usual conventional fun stuffs. I found Extra Life, an Extra Life booth, and I started doing some Extra Life stuff for a little bit. Do want to go back to it eventually because it was fun, but. I did it for I like got their like little card or whatever, contacted some of them, and I did some things in Morgantown where I live, and I met him through one of those events. And then I just eventually joined his Discord, and he was a super cool dude. So we chilled in the Discord and hung out and played a few games together, and then he ended up moving very far away, so I didn't get to have too many more in-person
Ooh,
meetings with him.
okay.
But we maintained contact over virtual means, and basically became a really solid friend.
Hopefully, I will meet him this year at Gamescom. He said that might actually happen.
Awesome, that would be cool.
Yeah. So perhaps I can meet him at least.
He's a really cool dude.
Yeah. Well, that's quite interesting. So today, actually, you wanted to cover in this podcast interview the topic of, if I understand it correctly, watching games as a form of entertainment rather than playing it yourself.
Correct. Yeah. So, things came up and I never got around to making the video myself for my channel. But I think it's a very interesting topic that kind of has a variety of kind of things going in on it, or going for it. And there's not a lot of discussion around it. And like, in my opinion, I feel like that there's I think there's one channel that comes off the top. If you've ever heard of Girlfriend Reviews, um, it's
Not really.
it's a YouTube channel where the kind of premise that goes for it is, it's a very popular channel now. They got like millions of subscribers, but essentially they reviewed games from the perspective of the girlfriend watching the boyfriend playing them. And they made some. They're like really short, like 8-minute views. They're really funny and quippy and stuff like that. They're really fun. But aside from like that major channel, like people don't really have the conversations around like what it means to kind of watch a game, and more so, obviously it's a game, so you want to play it. And then me and my friends, one of the things that we've been doing a lot more recently is we're interested in, usually it's the story, of course. So like the biggest example was the latest God of War entry. I don't own a PS5, so I wasn't able to play through the game. So my means was to watch through the game with my friend. We would go find like 4-hour long walkthroughs where there was no commentary, nothing. It was just pure gameplay, and they would just kind of be playing through the story, letting the cutscenes play out, and we would watch them. And so I just think it's a neat way to consume the game, in my opinion. It's like a very long, very, very long movie. And I think there's some key points that I wanted to bring up in the video. If I ever get around to actually completing it, which might not happen. I'm not going to make any promises at this point. But one of the points that I thought was pretty interesting is I watched a streamer play through it after completing the story on my walkthrough. And he was complaining about some of the railroading for God of War. So since it's a story-driven game, there's a lot of gameplay moments where it's like, no, you can't go over here and interact with this stuff. We want you to go do the story part first, and then you can have your way. And there's elements of frustration that comes when you're playing the game like that. But for me as a viewer, as a watcher, I'm like, I wanted the story. So for me, it was like, yeah, go where the story tells you to go. That's enjoyable for me as someone watching the game as opposed to playing it. And there's I think there's some interesting variation, or kind of alternative perspectives that comes from those two different angles. Because a lot of the things that people kind of complained about for God of War are good. Another one is the early game of God of War is very cutscene heavy. There's a lot of like story cutscenes and just kind of railroading, and it doesn't have like, until you get about to the mid game, it doesn't really open up and let you do a ton of gameplay. And people were not super enthralled by that idea. There's gameplay like sprinkled in, but for the most part, you were going from cutscene to cutscene pretty quickly. But for someone watching it for the story, as not a player, that kind of thing, from my perspective, was good because I just wanted the story.
So is that kind of like watching a Twitch streamer, but without the community and communication and interaction?
Yeah. So surprisingly enough, this was kind of another point of the video discussion that I was going to have. I guess at this point, that's just going to be this podcast instead of a full video. But there are a lot of long form video creators on YouTube where they literally just play through the game, and it's just like there's nothing going on besides gameplay. You're just literally watching someone play through the game, which occasionally there are some moments of frustration as someone who is a big gamer where I'm just like, I would have done that better if I were playing or something like that. And so it's like occasionally you get some of those elements of it, but for the most part, it's just a chill. Like most of them are going through the story, depending on like what you're looking for and what you're finding in terms of the game. And so it's a lot more of just kind of a movie-like experience where you're not engaging with anybody, you're not listening to anyone commentate over anything, you're just watching the game.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was actually the first time I heard about this from you, but then I figured there are other people seeing it similar. I always found it super boring to just watch and not interact with the game myself. But perhaps that's also a question of what type of person you are.
Yeah, I think it's game dependent for sure. I do think that there's obvious, like, you know, you don't, unless you're listening to someone commentate over the game, like a more gameplay driven experience, like I guess roguelikes come to mind, where it's like Dead Cells or Hades. Like those are very gameplay driven experiences. Of course there's narrative involved, but it's more like you're there to play the roguelike game. So like those types of games probably aren't as enjoyable to watch, because you're the whole point of the game is to experience it. But like when you get games like God of War and other, like Last of Us, I haven't watched through it, but you know, Last of Us is another good example of like, these are really story driven games that are trying to tell a narrative, a strong narrative. And I feel like sometimes those I feel like those games have a lot of value, just even if you just watch someone playing them as opposed to only playing them. Because I wouldn't have been able to play through or experience God of War if I'd have to wait and hope that it gets put on PC, which I think they probably will, because they put the first one on. But I'd be waiting for it, and it's like I want to go in, and I want to see the conclusion to this game. I was really enthralled and captivated by the first storyline, and so I was really enjoying it. The video was going to also talk about the story of God of War, because I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I was going to combine them two in the kind of one video, because I think there's a lot of discussion for that kind of stuff, or it could be a lot of interesting things to talk about.
Well, what I always did before the age of internet, when I had games like Command and Conquer, who had this full motion video and those cutscenes where the story was pushed forward, I always used to make a save game shortly before the mission was finished. So after I complete the game, I actually could load the save game before each mission was complete. In this way, I could watch all the cutscenes like a movie.
Oh, that's cool. That's a neat way to kind of get that experience as well. There are versions of that on YouTube. People have like, they'll have like God of War only cutscenes or whatever, and it has no gameplay at all. Those are harder to find earlier. So like I wanted to watch God of War as soon as it came out, right? Like I wanted to see that. So that's kind of why we went through the story of watching someone play through it. But when it comes to like after the game comes out a little bit, people do kind of take to the editing magic, and they'll just throw in the cutscenes and like story moments. It's a little tricky for something like God of War, because they actually do story dialogue as you're playing the game, so it's not always as clean. But if there's like a very cutscene heavy game, you can. I've seen plenty of like Kingdom Hearts 2 cutscenes only or something, and you just watch all the cutscenes.
Yeah, it's also hard for games that have different ways of progressing in the story. Like Detroit becomes human. It's very difficult. So sometimes you have like dozens of videos like takes this decision, take this part and that part,
Yeah.
and you know, and then you have bad ending 1, bad ending 2, good ending 1, good ending 2, and you get a totally different ending if 2 chapters before you took a wrong decision. So it's really getting crazy. You have channels with hundreds of video just about the same game and the different options of progressing in the game. Super weird at points.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how feasible it'd be, but it'd be really cool if there was like if the I think this was back then when YouTube had like the annotation stuff that you could put on screen, and I remember watching. I don't remember what the game was, but I do remember watching it where it's like a video happens, and then at the end of the game or at the end of the video, there's some kind of decision being made, and they put annotations for each decision, and then the annotation would link you to the video, like continuing it from that decision.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
seen that. Yeah,
and it's like they got rid of all that, so you can't do that anymore.
so bad, so bad. Yeah.
But that's a cool solution for, in my opinion. Probably because of games like Detroit Human, they might have got rid of it so people would go experience the game itself.
But nowadays you can do something different or something similar. You can use timestamps. So in theory, you could make one big videos and
That's
then
true.
edit timestamps to click in the video description for any decision you want to take.
That would be a big editing task in my that I can tell, but definitely possible. But yeah, for me personally, I like to there's like some games that are just like they're just too much to play through for me. Given my time and like interests, a lot of them tend to be the first one that I've ever watched a playthrough for. Well, I guess I did grow up on Let's Plays as well, so I kind of got that experience as I watch people do Let's Plays. But more recently, I watched the first God of War was like what kind of triggered all of this because my friend does it all the time, and he was actually the one that kind of got me into it because he would just there's a lot of games that he's a PC only gamer, so there's a lot of like Sony, Nintendo stuff that he doesn't get to play through until if they ever put it on PC. And
then often the conversion is like horrendous.
Yeah, then you gotta hope that it's a good conversion to PC and wait for them to patch it if it's not and all that other stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that went in there, and so there's plenty of exclusives that he wanted to he was interested in, and so he just watched people play them. It took me a while to finally agree. I'm a huge fan of Persona 5 Royal, and he's been like Persona 4 came on PC finally, and he played through it and really enjoyed it, and so he wanted to go watch Persona 5 Royal and watch the the gameplay and the cutscenes and stuff. And I was like, no, you gotta wait for it to come out on PC. Like, it's a good game, just wait for it to PC. And then he finally talked me into it. We watched the whole game on through this method, and we watched it online with a walkthrough video. They usually cut out they cut out most of the fights at this point because the game has been out for a while, so you don't have to watch any of the boss fights. They'll let you watch, but most of the running through the dungeon encounters, they just cut through it. They let you see through the dungeon if you're interested, but the most of the fights are kind of cut out, so streamline that a little bit for people who want to maybe play it at some point. Which he did. He actually got it when it did come on PC, like I predicted, a few years later, admittedly. But so he was able to kind of he had an idea of what the game was, but he was still able to kind of go in and make his own choices and kind of do his own thing. So it was kind of neat. But yeah, the God of War started it, and then another game that we watched through alongside, or I don't remember the timeline here, but we watched through the Spider-Man game, the PS4 Spider-Man game. Not the open world games for me aren't they don't do it for me all the time. I think the only one that really captivated me was Breath of the Wild, but I'm a Zelda fan, so I'm a little biased on that one. But there's a lot of things about the modern open world games that just don't really they're fun to play for a little bit, and then after 5 hours or so, I'm just I'm kind of done. But I'm a big Spider-Man fan, really big Spider-Man fan, and so I was curious about kind of the story behind Spider-Man on the PS4, and so we watched through the Spider-Man PS4 game, and it was really exciting. I was really happy with it. Got to experience all of the narrative stuff that they wanted me to, and it was a really good story, really good, narrative experience, kind of like I said, just like watching a movie. And sometimes there's like, you know, you're watching them do like the combat scenarios and you're just like, man, I just want to skip ahead to the to the story sometimes. But most of them, if you give it enough time, they will like do some editing tricks and kind of cut back on a lot of that if you're looking strictly for narrative. And then I think the next game that immediately comes to mind was the Xenoblade Chronicles series. I actually watched kind of a streamer do it this one, but it was basically my way of experiencing the game without having to play through it, because those games are very long JRPGs and I didn't really have the time or interest to go through the 60 plus hours that would be required to actually, see the story and whatnot.
Or the nerfs.
What was it?
Or the nerfs.
Yeah. And so I watched a JRPG streamer. She compiled a bunch of her name is Sarah Key, and she compiled her reactions to the games in a pretty well done way that like makes me able to kind of consume the story and get invested in the story, but not so much that I have to like watch because like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is like there's like a bunch of open world sections and there's a lot of exploring and running around, and it's like if you're not playing it, you're like that kind of stuff gets boring to watch if you're not actively playing it, or if you're not actively participating in the community or chat while you're watching. So thankfully all of that gets cut out down to like the important moments or like the fun reactions, and then of course all of the cutscenes and characters and all that stuff gets left in. And I really enjoyed the storyline. Like it was a really fun story, and I was really happy to be able to like it's something that I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't consume it through this means. Because there was not any real like I didn't have a lot of time to actually play through the whole game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, I mean, watching a game being played through and stuff, and the story and stuff, you could actually also do on the go. What you can't do with playing the game itself.
True. Yeah, I mean the Switch kind of helps a little bit. Xenoblade 3 is on the Switch, so like I haven't gotten to Xenoblade 3 yet, so still I think she put her stuff up for that too, so I eventually got to go watch it, but I've been getting involved in other stuff. But yeah, like if you don't have a Switch, or I mean Steam Deck, I mean mobile gaming's becoming a little more popular now. Steam Deck came out, Switch came out. So maybe one day we'll see, but I mean as an adult with a busy life and trying to work on other stuff, 60-hour games just can't really do it anymore.
Yeah,
it has to be something that really captivates me. So right now the Persona series, Persona 5 Royal was like one of those games where I'm just like the moment I booted it up, I'm just playing it for like a month straight, and I couldn't take my interest away from it. It was just so good for me. Really love that game. But like Persona 3, I downloaded it or bought it on the PC when they finally ported it over, and I played it for a little bit, and it's like it's good. It's not bad or anything, and it's something that I'm interested in, and I do like it. But sometimes you just get caught up in other things, and especially Persona, because they're like 80 plus, 100 plus hour games instead of 50 to 60.
And I mean, open world games are in the trend. I mean, look at Star Citizen.
Yeah,
that's games never seems to finish even. So
I played a lot of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas back when those were the hype. Really, like I enjoyed them, but again, like you would do some questing in an area, and then unless you were like gung ho on running through the story, eventually you do like 50 quests and you're like 20% through the story, depending on like how you're going about it. And so eventually I just was, other games came out, started interesting me, and I eventually stopped playing Fallout, and then kind of the cycle hits where it's like I want to go finish Fallout, and then now I don't know what the heck's going on because I haven't played it in a while. So I got like a 40-hour save file that's completely new and unfamiliar with me. Do I go back and restart the game and try to get the story again, or do I try to piece it together as I'm playing? As you know, lots of little small things kind of going about there that eventually just makes it so it's like, well, I don't feel like it. I'm just gonna go play the next game that came out that I'm interested in right now.
Interesting. I always thought I'm the only person not finishing games.
No, I've got plenty of games that I don't know. It's something kind of a recent, not recent, but it's been a more recent thing as I got older. It's like, because like I think I told you when I was doing the Settlers review that a new game came out that I was super interested in called Wolong, which is it's an action-driven adventure game, very action packed, just like fighting and deflecting and parrying, lots of combat in that game. I think I played 75% of it before Resident Evil 4 came out, and I just was like, I dropped it, played Resident Evil 4. I intended to do like a video on it even, and then just eventually never even finished it, which I was quite surprised, or I'm quite surprised now to see that. Like, I'm super invested in Resident Evil 4, and like I'm trying to learn the speed run for it right now. Is that actually? And so, I'm a huge fan of the original, and this game just captured me. It did everything I wanted and more, and everything like that. And then I see Wolong in my library getting updates because they're patching some stuff, and I'm like, do I want to go play it? I don't know. I think I'll just play some more Resident Evil 4. You just kind of, I think at this point I've just come to accept that some games just aren't going to be finished, and there's no harm in that.
Well, I mean, sometimes when I have longer holidays, I'm making an effort, I mean, just at the beginning of this year, I finally finished Thimbleweed Park.
What was it?
Thimbleweed Park.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
No? That was the game before Monkey Island by Ron Gilbert.
Okay.
And David
I've heard of
Fox.
Monkey Island.
Yeah. So we actually had David Fox and Ron Gilbert in the podcast to talk about Thimbleweed Park back then. So
nice.
It was a Kickstarter, and that's actually with pixelated graphics in the old school style, and a coworker was asking me, so did you finish Thimbleweed Park yet? And I was always like, no, not yet. I started another game instead.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on finishing King's Quest Reboot from 2015. So that means it's now over 7 years, and I still haven't finished the game, because my problem is often with certain games, like adventure games or action games, I get stuck at some point. And if I try hard enough, at some point I'm getting frustrated, and then I'm like, okay, put it aside, do it sometime later. But in between, another game is getting released, and I'm totally into that, and then suddenly, like, wow, it's 7 years since I bought this game. Perhaps I should finish it at some point, I mean, I know the story already because it's King's Quest, right? But I really should finish it. I mean, it has wonderful graphical presentation and stuff, and it has Christopher Lloyd as one of the main characters, as a how you say, voice artist. So I definitely should finish that game. But I totally see where you're coming from, because I'm having the same problem. I'm not a person who finishes games.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically how it works for me, though. Usually it's like I'll quit playing the game for like any reason really, and then like I'll just I'll see another game and I'm like, ooh, new piece of candy or new shiny object. Let's go check it out. And then I'll check it out. And then as you described, it's like, oh well, I have this shiny object and that's an old shiny object. So I'll just keep playing the new shiny object and just keep kind of going along the train. And then whoopsie, it's 7 years later and I still haven't finished whatever game it was I was working on. Still haven't beat Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas or Skyrim or any of those older titles that I was interested in. At this point, I'm probably never going to because I lost complete interest at this point where just not really, there's just other games out there that I'm much more excited for and interested in playing. I'll probably get to Wolong eventually because my friends are very much into the game and so they'll eventually convince me to go back and play it. But right now I'm just kind of in this Resident Evil 4 and then the new Zelda game comes out next month, and as a huge Zelda fan, that's probably going to be my month of May and potentially June too.
Nice. Yeah.
And so just kind of one of the ways that I've managed to get around or be able to consume stories that I think are interesting and while not having to play games, just be able to go in, watch it for a little bit. It's really nice when you find the ones that do cut out the extra fluff and just get straight to the point with the storylines. But there's the arrow key to the right on YouTube works wonders as you just skip around videos and get to the story driven stuff that you're interested in.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm really looking forward, for example, to Tempest Rising, which is promising to be the next Command and Conquer replacement, I would say. And I'm totally planning on finishing that game. Let's see how well that goes.
Yeah, for me, one of the games that I'm really looking forward to this year is Baldur's Gate 3. Really big fan of D&D, although I don't play it as much as I'd like to. And Larian Studios is one of my favorite developers. They did Divinity Original Sin 2, and I've been in this constant cycle where me and my friend, I think there's like 4 or 5 acts total. We'd get through like 75% of Act 2, and then we would quit playing for various reasons, and then we would go back and be like, "Do you want to just start over since we haven't played it in a while and we're kind of unfamiliar with it and stuff?" And we would start a new character and everything like that. And so I think I've beaten Act 1 and 2 in that game like 4 times, and I still haven't beaten the whole game.
Wow. Well, that's something I try to avoid. I try to avoid restarting games. That's nothing for me. Yeah.
Well, a couple of, so like one of them was one of our friends dropped out of the campaign like midway through, so we started over with just the 2 of us, and then like another friend wanted to join, so we kind of started over with that friend. I mean, just the 2 of us started over like twice, I believe, so we're still guilty of it for sure, like just the 2 of us. But we downloaded some of the like modded characters as well and modded classes with new abilities and such, and so we kind of got into a combination of, once you get to like Act 2, like new stuff stops being as common, and so you kind of get into this like, oh, I want to go try the other classes now because those are new, and then you just restart, get a new class, and kind of keep going. And then in Act 2, you're like, well, I got pretty much all of the class abilities, like with the exception of maybe like 3 or 4 super abilities, and so we just kind of fell victim to that kind of loop for a little while. I'd like to go back and finish it before Baldur's Gate comes out, though. That's kind of a little mini goal I'm hoping I can maybe go do, depending on how things go. Baldur's Gate comes out August 31st, I think it is, so got a little bit of time this summer.
One thing that I learned is how I'm thankful there is cloud save games nowadays, especially on Steam. I noticed that when Detroit Become Human, when there was a bug in the game that at some point you couldn't progress further, and at some point I was watching tutorials and YouTube videos how to actually unbreak the game, and it turned out you had to delete some save game files,
Oh,
and
geez.
and I made backup of the cloud saves by backupping the local folder, but for some reason it didn't work. I spent like 3 hours and sent email to Quantum Dream, the studio, and sent emails to Steam support. And after a week, I figured it out and I could resume the game. And I was like, oh my god, I almost ruined the game to me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, those kind
because
of.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say the problem with Destroy Become Human is, especially the beginning of the game, is very emotional. And I
Right.
was like, I don't want to go through that again a second time, you know. It's one of those games that really got me, you know. I mean,
Yep.
even though I know it's androids and stuff, but you still feel with the characters if their body is ripped apart and stuff. I'm like, oh my god, no, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was personally one of those moments like, yeah, I remember that before there was internet, when you forgot to back up your save game folders, you were doomed and had to
Yeah.
redo the whole game, and I was devastated.
Yep. As someone who dabbles a lot in modding, I can certainly say backing up the saves became a very quick habit of mine. I did that for Elden Ring when that released, and I've been modding the heck out of that game pretty much ever since it released. At this point, I've already played it I'm already at a point where I don't really mind if my old save gets deleted because I've already beat the game and whatnot. But yeah, modding, a lot of the mods, whenever you go on Elden Ring, for sure, they're like, back up your saves because you never know. I've certainly had some of them get completely deleted, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad I backed them up just in case, even though I'm starting a new character with like all the extra mods and whatnot.
I have to admit, the only game I ever modded was the recently released earlier this year Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, because I
really?
didn't really like the music that came with it. So when there was a mod to have the retro tunes as music in it,
nice.
I was like, yeah, that's a mod I want to apply. And I wanted to apply some other mods where you had to download a modding system to run with the game, but it would only run with an older version of the game, and due to Steam having pushed an update already, it broke the game totally. So in the end, I was like, okay, I stick with my music mod, because they only have to replace audio files and not break the game, you know. Yeah. So that is like my first and my last adventure with modding a game.
Yeah, I'm pretty big into like a lot of modding scenes. It's honestly another thing that I tend to do is I'll see like a shiny new game, and then I'll notice that my old game got shinier due to mods, and it's like, I'm just gonna go play this old game that over again. Like, why am I playing Dark Souls for the 50th time when I could be playing some of my backlog? But yeah, I've modded all of the Dark Souls games to end and back pretty much. And Elden Ring being one of the more recent ones that I've dabbled in. I recently dabbled with modding Breath of the Wild. That was a fun adventure. Thankfully, there's a Wii U emulator that makes it a lot easier, and so I can use my computer to mod everything. And then, kind of in the same vein, I played a Super Mario RPG randomizer, which is an old Super Nintendo game. Really, probably one of my favorite RPGs of all time. And so when I found that, I was super excited. I think I did like 4 or 5 playthroughs of the game just doing the randomizer. And then I did like a randomizer stream that was pretty fun. All that VOD there, even made the VOD. I was actually quite surprised because I just did the very simple highlight the video in Twitch, and then poured it to YouTube, and it didn't do anything to it. And then I just did like a a regular thumbnail and whatnot. And then a lot of people were actually watching it, and I'm like, wow, people are watching this. I didn't expect anybody to watch it. It was a pretty kind of random thing to do, or to
Yeah.
kind of put up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been like mod or ROM hacks is as what they call so like old games, and was it Super Mario 64. I had there's like a few ROM hacks for that. There's like one big Super Mario 64 ROM hack that like is basically its own game. It's like they just made an entire game in the Mario 64 engine, and it's like it's basically playing the game over again because they did so many changes to it. So I played that a long time ago, and just kind of I modded the heck out of Skyrim, and then I never played Skyrim. It's kind of the fun little meme where you spend like 15 hours modding it to heck, and then you never play the game after you finish modding it. So I'm a huge fan of those kinds of things. I really enjoy kind of new takes on a game that I've already finished. I think those are really fun to do. Randomizers are something that I've dabbled with as well. Those are really fun to play around with.
I mean, one of those prime examples, I guess, for modding games would be GTA 5, where they made a graphic mod that would make the game on the PC looking so much more modern.
Yeah.
I think that became so famous, this mod, that even, at least here in Germany, the game press mentioned it.
Really?
It's like if you ever thought the GTA 5 graphics sucks, take this mod. It's making it shinier than ever. And it was like, okay, nice.
Yeah.
And I think they even pushed that when there were some leaks from GTA 6, like, have the experience of GTA 6 almost already now, with
Almost
GTA 5
GTA.
and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
I did that with one of the Dark Souls 3 mods. It was like a huge overhaul mod that like added a bunch of new spells and new weapons and stuff. And I was like doing some clickbaity stuff, and I was like, you got to play this before Elden Ring comes out. It's the Elden Ring before Elden Ring. So that was pretty fun to do. There's like I think there's a lot of really cool things that the modding scene kind of puts out there. Sometimes they're insanely creative to no end, and it's just, these are people that most of the time don't even get paid to be doing all this work on a game, and they're putting in so much time and effort into it. And I deeply appreciate that kind of stuff, and value that endless passion that they have to work on something like that.
Actually, what I even find more amazing is community patches for games. Like when I got Wing Commander 4 on CD for the PC, I actually found out there's installer to make it installable in Windows 7 and up, and it includes the DVD version of the cutscene FMVs. So it has a lot better quality, and it's even still compatible, even though the mod or the community patch is for Windows 7. It even makes it compatible with Windows 11. So I'm like, wow,
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's so including joystick support and DirectX and all this stuff, and I was like, wow, amazing, because when I had a friend who was selling his Wing Commander collection, on physical media, I was like, yeah, I'm getting it, and even without thinking, like, if I ever get any of those games to run on my Windows 11 machine, and then I figured out, oh yes, there's a community patch for Wing Commander 4 and for Wing Commander 5, and even if you don't want to use a patch, and you want to buy the original the original DVD release of Wing Commander 4, it was sold so badly that you hardly can find it anywhere, even if you want to use it, you know. And something similar happened with the original Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun, the German version of the game. The original is really very rare nowadays because they brought out the gold edition, and people were actually sending me emails like, "Hey, do you want to sell your original copy?" I'm like, "No, I'm not selling it."
Yep.
You know? Nope. I was like, "Wow!" So now even PC games are getting rare.
Yep.
You know? So yeah.
But so glad that the go ahead.
Sorry, so glad that.
So glad that the emulation scene is nice for all of those older titles. Like my friend actually kind of had a little thing come up where his parents didn't recognize the value of a lot of his old systems, and they gave a lot of them away or threw them out. And he was looking at like all of the prices for them, that kind of stuff now is like, what's what's the Pokemon games going for GBA or whatever, and it's like $300 for like a good quality actual. And then there's also, I guess he was saying that there's like fake cartridges now, which is also a problem.
True.
Which I didn't even know about that kind of stuff, which kind of makes sense. But like if you want an official cartridge of those older titles, you got to like pump out the cash to ching, and then like the systems themselves, thousands of dollars. So it's really nice that there's means to play those older games and just kind of be able to enjoy them through those.
Well, I have to admit, in case of Wing Commander 3, I went the easy part and just spent $5 on getting the GOG version, because then I don't have to fiddle with making it work in DOSBox from the CD and stuff. I was like, okay, €5 is good enough for Wing Commander 3. And then, even though it was the compatible patched with DOSBox GOG version, you still had to manually adjust the DOSBox delivered with the game to match the speed of your system. Because otherwise the game FMVs would be stuttering.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, so even though you got the GOG version, you still have to manually adjust it to your system, So yeah, and the problem is, because every system has a different speed, you always have to manually adjust that. And GOG doesn't tell you that. You only find it out in the community forums yourself. Yeah. I wish there would be something like a warning, like, hey, before you start the game, change those settings to match your computer system. But they don't do that, So totally get you there. Yeah, super amazing. I mean, we are already talking an hour about this topic almost. It's super interesting, because the first time you mentioned the topic, playing games by watching it without touching the controls yourself, so kind of watching the games being played, I was like, is that a real topic? But obviously it is. Yeah,
I mean, I don't. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, and it could be more of an issue in the future if at some point you can't get a hold of a game anymore, or you can't get the hardware to run the game anymore,
Yeah. I think it gives a lot of opportunity, like, because I know at least there's like a lot of conversations around game preservation, especially as like older titles start getting, and that's why a lot of people are big on the emulators being around to kind of preserve those games that are being left basically aside by certain developers. And so like I think there is an interesting kind of history and just like game preservation side as well, especially if you're trying to like just see old stuff, especially I say that maybe a little too. Anyway, especially as you also consider games as a live service now. A lot of games are doing that. Me and my friend recently actually we're big fans of League of Legends, the big MOBA game. We still play it begrudgingly to this day. But recently we were kind of going down a nostalgia trip, and he managed to find old footage of like older patches of the game before like the modern stuff was implemented. And it's just like it's literally impossible to experience that now. Like you literally, there's no down patching system. There's no. It's one of the reasons that like things like WoW Classic and RuneScape Classic became kind of a big topic and whatnot. It's like there's no way to experience old League of Legends anymore, or in a lot of these live service games like Fortnite even. There's no way to experience the first patch of Fortnite anymore, and so seeing that like old stuff being preserved through random YouTube videos and stuff, I think that's a very interesting kind of thing, and being able to keep that around and have that preserved, and that even if it isn't something you can play, but just have that visuals around and be able to witness or see like what the game used to be.
Yeah, true. And then sometimes you have options on, for example, on Battle.net that is like, get this collection, but only for 2 months, and then it will no longer be sold. And it
there's
was
a lot
like,
of
ooh, yeah.
a lot of FOMO going around, fear of missing out, and there's a lot of like content and skins, whatever you might have that you can only get during certain periods. And so heaven forbid if like League of Legends ever dies and like everything just drops, it's a live service game, like where like they have to pay for like servers and like all these other things. I don't expect that anytime soon, mind you, but like there's certain games. What was I watched a video about it recently. It's like Rumble Royal or something. It's a battle royale game, but it was like a fighting game. And you played as these like derpy wrestlers, and just kind of it looked like a really fun time. Not the biggest battle royale guy, so I didn't really get too far into it, but it looked really fun. My friend's brother played it a lot, and I watched this video talking about the game because it was a YouTuber who fell in love with it and like played countless hours of it. And they recently like dropped the servers, and like the game is no longer supported anymore. And it was a very heartfelt kind of video to just watch this community essentially no longer be able to play this game that they've come to love. And like with all of this kind of modernized live service stuff, like there's all kinds of that potentially going around. Who's to say when the company is going to deem something not profitable and just drop the game, and the community probably won't be able to maintain it. That's some of the beauty of these older games. Like I can play Mario 64 whenever I want. There's nothing there's nothing stopping me from playing Mario 64 right now, but I can't play old League of Legends, or these guys can't play that battle royale anymore. And it's it's not the best way to preserve it, but having these videos on there and whatnot, it's it's a history thing. It's history now.
Actually had a look. It was the Blizzard Arcade Collection. That is the one I was talking about, and it was only available for a couple of months, and then they dropped it from the stores again. It was actually planned as a limited time possibility. So I actually wanted it because it had all the versions of rock and roll racing in it. And I found that super interesting to have all the versions playable on the PC. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And it also includes some interviews with the creators of the game, and of course, me as a historian, I was totally interested in hearing the stories, how the rock and roll racing games came to be and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I totally understand their point. As a publisher or game development studio, you don't really care about those things like history and preserving. You are mainly about paying the salaries and the stock owners, you know.
Yep.
That's
All
how it
about
usually
that.
goes.
Yep. All about that profit and cash. So yeah, if something doesn't drive a profit, they're just gonna cut it out. For better or for worse. But yeah, I watched the video about that battle royale, and it was just such a heartbreaking video because it looked like such a fun game, and the community looked like they were having a great time with it, and then you just can't do it anymore, and there's no way to. And I guarantee you the developers they're not going to release it, you know, like they're never going to release this stuff for public domain so that someone could scoop it up, because I'm sure there's definitely talented people out there that can figure out a way. So yeah, I mentioned the Rumble or the Battle Royale game. You can't have it anymore. So now it doesn't exist anymore. I forget what I was going to. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so as the games are now being, like, there's so many live service games being released these days and all that such. So oh, I remember now. I was talking about public domain, because I think that there does exist a community that could. I think the best example of this would be the Super Smash Brothers Melee community, in that they developed their own online net play system in order with a ranking system and everything. Like, they managed to. You can now go online. You can now join other people. They even have like a system where you can. So competitive Melee has a system where you pick your stages, and then if you lose, you get to ban some stages, and then the winner, or no, the other way around. The winner bans a couple stages, and then the loser gets to pick the stage to kind of, whatever stage they want to play on that might be beneficial towards them, and then you ban a couple that might be unbeneficial towards you that you don't want to play on, stuff like that. There's even like a system to do that online, as opposed to because usually that kind of stuff is all played in person in like big tournaments. And for the most part, like, the online systems for Melee were just like, you have to know someone and like set it all up and all that stuff. But now it's like all built into the emulation system. You just go up, hit ranked, and then you just match with people. There's a system for you to ban stages and like do the best of 3 stuff that you would do in a tournament. All of it like community driven. Like, obviously Nintendo doesn't want anything to do with Melee at this point in terms of competitiveness. So this is literally just a huge community project. So I don't have any doubts in my mind that if, the Battle Royale that got completely, dropped off the face of the, servers, and, left all of the community with no way to go play it again. If they had it in like some public domain system, that there would totally be a handful of people passionate about the game who found a way to make it run and make people able to join it again.
I mean, there are some positive examples. I mean, not only speaking about the negative examples, just like you did, but there were also some positive ones. Like, there are some old Command & Conquer titles that you can't play anymore online, but EA, for some reason, allowed the community to make their own server infrastructure. And when you click in the games on the buttons to make the online play, it actually forwards from the old domain to the new community-driven domain. I was totally amazed that
That's
EA
cool, yeah.
actually would go this far and say like, hey, no problem. We still have our domains. We will just put forward to your community-driven server system, so you can still play our old Command and Conquer games online. I was totally amazed by that. Or
Yeah,
another example is Plur, the old game from Activision 2010, which is like an adult version of Super Mario Kart.
Okay.
And despite the game is from 2010, Activision still kept the servers up. So even now, 13 years later, you can still play the game multiplayer.
Okay, well, that's
Super
certainly
amazing.
surprising news to me. I wouldn't have expected EA to do something like that.
No,
personally.
But you mean the Command and Conquer thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
You said it was EA?
Yeah, EA. Yeah.
EA's reputation is not the greatest these days, so I probably wouldn't expect that. But that's good. That's good for sure. Like, props to them. When you do good, you do good. Like I would hope that that's something that can continue to happen as these games start, becoming less profitable for them, and they just, they can hand over the reins to more community members and people that are passionate about these titles, because there's certainly a community out there that still wants to play these, and even older, like much older games, like the games you were mentioning, though, like there's still people out there. I mean, Ocarina of Time is how old now, and people still play the heck out of it. It's
True.
like they, when a game is good and people build a passion for it, they'll find means to continue playing it and find new ways to playing it. Like Ocarina of Time is, super popular now, randomizers galore, all kinds of crazy stuff going on there. So these newer titles that maintain this like live service environment and require that you have these requirements of being online and all this other stuff. If those reins could be handed over to someone passionate in the community, I would be so happy if like more of that could happen for sure.
For me personally, as a retro player, a big downer was also when GameSpy server stopped, because suddenly me and my friends couldn't play PlayStation 2 games against each other anymore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like that's just that's been kind of the things are. I think, what was it, the Wii U eShop? I remember watching or hearing a guy from The Completionist, if you're familiar with that guy, that channel. He like bought all of the games on the Wii U eShop to preserve them before it went down. And so like lots of the older stuff has been going down more commonly. I think PSP, there was like a shop on there for that went down a few years ago. I remember reading about and stuff like that. I think my friend actually was messing around with that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of tricky because like the games that are still ongoing, like we mentioned with League of Legends, like how are you gonna play old League? You probably can't. There's no way. And even if like a fan came along and found a way to recreate it, I doubt Riot would be too pleased with someone doing such a thing.
Yeah, that's
So-
true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really an issue. Well, I mean, probably it will be an issue for us, but probably not for newer generations, depending on how you see it, because they will be used to it, Physical media
Yep.
was that, I mean, even I remember my first game on Steam was actually was actually on a DVD, and the Steam client was just installed from the DVD with it,
Mm-hmm. Yep. I have
This is how I got Steam back in 2008,
I think I have my Fallout 3 discs lying somewhere around here.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I also have Killing Floor 1, if you've ever heard of that game.
Yeah, I heard, yeah.
I have that on a disc as well.
Now I remember what game it was. It was Speedball 2000. Yeah,
Yep.
and that was on Steam. Yeah, and even and even games nowadays are still sometimes released on physical, even though it became rarer. For example, the latest Flight Simulator from Microsoft. I have the DVD version with it.
Nice.
Quite nice, yeah.
Yeah, I don't usually. I think for like I haven't seen a PC physical in like forever. Um, thankfully, I think like even the consoles nowadays are starting to go away from it.
Right,
The
yeah.
what was it, the PS5 now has a non-disc reader version of it that's like cheaper, and you just download the games and it's like like that's cool as an option, but like for me personally, I'm a big fan of collecting the physical releases
Same for
and
me.
preserving
Same
them.
for me.
Um,
Yeah.
I have I try to get every game that I can on a physical release if I can. One of the nice things about you know being a Nintendo fan is that they still tend to do that for the most part.
True.
I got
True.
my pretty sure I'll get a cartridge for the new Breath of the or the new Zelda game. So
True.
at least for the time being, I'll still have those. I mean, it's not like it's not anything too crazy, but for me, I don't know. It's just it's like a comfort feeling for me as to know that I can just have my system offline, have the cartridge in hand, and just be able to plug it in and play it whenever I want.
When I saw Tempest Rising was on pre-order last December on Amazon for physical release, I was like, yeah, I'm getting that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did the same with.
But just to mention, many physical releases unfortunately just have a code in it and a
Really,
box.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
What did you
I think
want to
I've.
say? Sorry, I interrupted you there for a second.
I was gonna say I did the same for Breath of the Wild. I was like, yep, give me that physical copy. As soon as I could. But yeah, I think I've seen slash heard of that too. They just put codes in them, and it's like, what are you doing? I'm not
Yeah.
here for just the box. I want the I want the cartridge or the disc or whatever.
Yeah. But also sometimes, especially for PC releases, you tended to have a Steam client on the disc and the rest is downloaded. I'm like, what? How is that a physical release?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I didn't know that they did that, to be honest. I haven't done like a physical PC release for years. I do think it was either Far Cry 2 or the Killing Floor one that I purchased. And they had their own like boot up from the disc, and then eventually they got transferred over to Steam, and I just like have it on Steam now. So,
yeah, I have to admit, for those newer games, I'm just using the Steam code and put it into Steam because downloading is still faster than reading it from the DVD.
mhm.
You know?
Yep. Yeah, I have a ton of Steam games that I still have, lots of backlog to get to. I've, at this point, it's just the reality that I live in, and I've accepted that, but it's still a little disappointing at times where it's like, RE4 Remake, I wouldn't mind having a physical copy of that. It's one of my favorite games.
Well, you are still
But-
young enough. You can still
yeah.
play through all the games in the future.
Yep. So far, I can't think of any game right now that I would be able to pinpoint that I can't play if I really like. I can't. I just like can't play it anymore for any reason. So far, with all of the emulation preservation, pretty much everything right now is I can go play it if I really wanted to. So that's good.
Well, I mean, in the recent years, when they discovered all those Nintendo satellite games from Japan, I was like, yeah, I'm getting a physical release of this satellite version of F-Zero for the Super Nintendo. Amazing. Yeah. So even that got preserved. but people found it out 20 years later, 30 years later, like, whoo, I didn't remember I downloaded that from the Japanese satellite system like 30 years ago. And here is it. You're welcome. So super amazing how things are still discovered nowadays.
Yeah, it's always new discoveries. I think it's quite fascinating myself as well.
Yeah.
Um,
and that there are really people mainly from Japan who are like, yeah, I'm making an English version for you. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like, wow.
Yeah, I think a popular example, there's like a random example for me was that Mother 3, I believe, is like a huge deal within like everyone's begging Nintendo to just give it to us English release, but I know that there is like a fan translated like ROM hack that you can download if you really wanted to, and play it somewhere out there. I've seen it a little bit, but I never picked it up.
Yeah.
But like, there's lots of really cool things because there's a handful of, especially the Nintendo side of things, like a handful of Japanese exclusive stuff, and people have been putting in a lot of good work in translating and giving us the ability to experience it.
Exactly. Yeah. And at some point in the 90s, some Japanese thought like, hey, let's keep those downloaded satellite images. Perhaps sometime down in the future, people will need it. I wonder what the third process was. What the thought process was back then. Because I guess personally, me as a kid, I didn't think I would need to preserve anything. Never had this thought.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually like, it's something that I've been a little bit more, as someone who makes videos and has to delete lots of footage all the time. It's like I kind of wish I could keep all that, but I only have so much hardware space. I can't I can't keep it around. But I just think it's like the whole idea of like internet preservation is a fairly interesting one. I've watched this. I think it's called Quentin Reviews is his name. Off the top of my head, not 100% on that one, but it's a guy who recently I've been super interested in watching him review. He's been reviewing like super old TV shows actually. So he's been watching or recently doing it for Nickelodeon. There's a show like iCarly and like all the shows like along that same like kind of idea. And he's been reviewing those and like huge like 6-hour long documentary videos, which are very, very fascinating to watch, just to kind of like, it's a trip down memory lane, but also one that's like not as nostalgic because he breaks it down and like shows like what was going on in the stuff, and you're just like, oh wow, that was not as good as I thought it was, or that was like not as there's a lot more to it than I remember. I thought it was just this happy-go-lucky stuff as a kid. But one of the things that I thought was fairly interesting was him going through the process of finding footage, because it's like really difficult to like really find footage of those old TV shows, especially like every single episode. Because he for iCarly, I believe he like breaks down every episode like one by one throughout the whole season, and so he has like this kind of network of people who have somehow maintained like archive, like there's like networks of individuals who have like archived various things like this. And I just think that's, personally to me, that like that became really fascinating, where it's like, who would have thought to just keep around a random kids show from 2005 or something like that. But it's like a process, a historic process that like I do think is important and often necessary, especially with how fast and forward the internet tends to be. With it's like, oh, that's history, just leave it alone. It's like, no, we should keep a hold of some of that.
And I mean,
for-
especially back in the 80s, 70s, 60s, um, many TV channels and stations actually erased old tapes
yeah.
to record new shows on it to broadcast.
Mhm.
So even if you want to approach them and say like, "Hey, do you have a copy of this show from the 60s?" They are like, "Nope.
Yep.
We broadcasted this and then we erased the tape and put something new on it. Sorry."
Yeah, ever since I started watching his videos, I had this like newfound appreciation for the whole preservation process of visual media, or just media in general. Because at first you don't think about it, right? You're just like, I watched a cool show, yay! But like, there's some value in keeping that around.
I mean, that's the reason why many movies and series nowadays that you can buy on DVD are actually VHS copies,
Hmm.
because they totally don't have the original tapes anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. Um, like wow, like what's going on there, you know? And and it's interesting how people on Amazon and so on, the reviews, like awful quality, awful capture quality. It's
Yeah.
not worthy to be on a DVD. And then I would like to comment. Unfortunately, Amazon removed the comments on reviews, right? But
Mhm.
I would love to comment like, "Are you an idiot? That's the only way to keep watching the series, because the original tapes are not around anymore. Be lucky you have something you can watch
Yeah.
on TV, you know."
Yep.
But people sometimes don't get it. They don't get it, you know. I
Yep.
understand people have their 4K television. They want best quality possible.
Yep. They're in that internet cycle at this point, just constant. Oh,
Yeah.
I finished this piece of entertainment. Dump it out. Go find the next one. Oh, dump it. Go find like just not really even thinking about anything. Just kind of one, like just going from one to the other. Um.
Yeah. And then there are like comments like, "Why didn't they remaster the original tapes?" And then it's like, because there are no original tapes
Yeah.
anymore, you know. That's exactly why you have a VHS version on DVD. You're
They don't
welcome, you
exist.
know. Yeah. It's I mean, it's just like 10 years ago when somebody found a VHS in his garage about an old interview with Steve Jobs, and Amazon actually sold it, and they sold it, this interview, on burned CDs. No, sorry, on burned, so on DVD-Rs. And was like, "Wow, this is super shabby." But at least I
Yeah.
have a copy of this VHS preserved interview. And the history goes that actually the original tape was supposed to be sent by the postal service to a broadcast studio, but the postal service lost the tape. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's bad
Nice
luck
little.
there, you know. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Well, super interesting to talk to you about this topic.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Kind
We
of.
kind of sidetracked here from watching gameplay to preserving games by watching gameplay and movies and stuff.
Had a little side quest along the way, but
True.
still, I think it was a lot of fun.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like for me personally, the games that as someone who, you know, has a lot of stuff going on in life, there's just plenty of games that I would otherwise be unable to consume, but I want to consume for various reasons. Which I think is why, like, Twitch streams themselves, they're super popular. I know a lot of that's content creators being entertaining, but there's an element of like, you want to see this game being played and whatnot. Like I used to watch I was such a big, I mean, I still am, but such a big Persona 5 Royal fan that I like looked for every possible person that I could find play through it just so I could see how they were, how they were enjoying it. It was like this weird element of like connection with other people as you watch them enjoy a piece of media that you enjoyed. But I think that there could be I just think that there are some unique perspectives that could be, talked about, or as we did discuss a little bit today already. If I, if you really sit down with it, because like I said, there's elements of the game that for me personally, I didn't hate because I watched it. And then there's elements that the gamer that was playing it, they were like, I wish there was more combats and more, more gameplay. And I'm like, no, give me the movie. And just finding ways to, I think it's kind of interesting in both of the preservation conversation as well as the entertainment one, is like just having footage of stuff for whatever reason you need it to be there. Like I have just random people playing Spider-Man is, I think that has a lot of value just being there for not only for my sake and consuming the story on my own time, but also just by having it around for, just in case,
I mean, in the future, at some point, we will have something like ChatGPT, and we can just put them. We can just feed it with video footage and like recreate the game based on the video footage, and then here you go.
That stuff's pretty wild. I've been seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's such a weird, kind of a weird, not weird, but like, I don't know, just a weird and fascinating thing being someone who, being a millennial and growing up in the 90s, and you got to just see how we went from like crappy like VHS all the way to like artificial intelligence already like
True.
creating art and doing all kinds of crazy things. It's like,
it
just went by so fast. It's like, holy crap.
I mean,
and I got this.
Sorry, you
and
got this?
I got to see that evolution,
right,
in real time, which is pretty fascinating.
And you have fascinating stuff like the remastered of Command and Conquer Remastered release, where they actually use AI to improve the FMVs.
Really?
Yeah, and that was so impressive because when they made the remastered version of Command and Conquer, especially the Tiberian War, the first. No, sorry, it was the Tiberian. What was the English title of the first Command and Conquer? I think it was Command and Conquer. Perhaps it was Tiberian Conflict, or was it Tiberian War? Because I know in German it's called Conflict. You don't know by chance, right?
Nope.
Okay, let's see. Wikipedia to the rescue. What was the English title? Boop, boop, boop. Command and Conquer. Okay, they actually don't have a title in the English. Okay. Oh, never mind then. Anyway, the first Command and Conquer had the issue that the actor, one of the main actor, General Shepard, actually died. So the original plan was to just use the old actors and make them replay their old roles, and they couldn't do it because General Shepard died. So they were like, okay, what's the next best solution to improve video quality of the FMVs if we don't have the master material? And that was like AI. super amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So this is how far we came, because I remember I always used to say, how do you want to improve image quality if the information is missing? You
Yeah.
cannot recreate the missing information of a picture or a video. But with AI you can. With magical solutions and whatever. I'm like super, super amazed by that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, mine on a simpler scale, I'm always amazed by when I do Photoshop, when I do my thumbnails, and I don't know if you've ever messed with Photoshop much, but there's
Not
like
me.
a filter, and one of the filters is called the sharpen filter. And it like just magically makes images look much cleaner, and just like even if you have like a slightly blurry image or something, you just throw it through the sharpen filter, and it's like just, I mean, there's obviously things you can do to tweak it a little bit, but usually it's just like boom, done, and I'm just like, that looks so much better. How did you do that in like 2 seconds? You made this blurry image just like look so much cleaner, and even like already high quality images, like it's still like you can tell like there's like a little touch done from the sharpen filter, and I've been using it ever since. It's just so it's especially helpful if I'm looking for uh certain things that just aren't very commonly found, and like the images are a little bit smaller resolution. It helps clear it up if I need to use it for stuff. But just nice in general to clean up an image in a very quick fashion. And it's just, it's some kind of algorithm tweak that they put in there, and it just does its magic. It's not as obviously nowhere, not as crazy as AI filling in photo gaps or video gaps, but just even that simplicity is just like, for me, it's just so mind-boggling. It's like, holy crap, that's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, this is where technology improves, you know. But hey,
Yeah.
thanks for this interview. I learn a lot more about you. You have a lot of qualities and things you are into. I didn't know.
yeah, I'm kind of a jack of all trades at this point.
Oh.
I've I don't know, I'm a very curious person. I'm very curiosity driven, and so sometimes I find a lot of things fascinating, and I'll just occasionally get caught up in certain aspects of other things that aren't as familiar with, and I just enjoy learning about them. Um, that's kind of where I was with the video preservation stuff with that one video, or that one reviewer that I mentioned. It was like, wow, this is really cool. I didn't realize that there was a whole community of people that were dedicated to preserving the history of like visual media. Like, that's just absolutely fascinating to me. Like, there's so much, like, that's so cool. And there's just like, all kinds of different interesting people out there, and I'm just a curious person that likes to see it.
Well, just earlier this year in January, I actually discovered there is a YouTuber who plays FMV games. And to this point, I even didn't know that there are FMV games where you just watch the story go by, and then after 10 minutes, you're asked like, make your selection. And then you're asked like which route of the story you want to go.
Yeah.
And then like, oh my god, what is that? Is that Wing Commander 4 without the gameplay? And people are actually enjoying that. I was like, okay, I found a key for $5. Let's have a look. And I was like, it's not really my type of game, but there are people
Yeah.
liking that, and there are games for that. I wouldn't call it games, obviously. I would call it interactive interactive way splitting movies or whatever.
Yeah.
But people enjoy that. But generally the era of FMV driven games is supposed to be an era that's over, because those games basically failed
Mm-hmm.
for some exceptions. but who's talking about those full FMV games anymore? Not many, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some honorable mentions like Phantasmagoria, I think, is one of them and stuff. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I can't think of any of the like. I'd probably recognize it if I saw it, but I can't think of any of the titles of them off the top of my head.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think. I mean, in a similar fashion, there's the people who enjoy. It's called visual novels, and they're just kind of like you basically do the same thing, but it's in a usually anime themed uh, type stylized or type art or an anime theme artistic style, and then you just kind of read and interact with. Sometimes they do have animations and stuff, but most of the time you're just kind of reading and listening what the characters are saying, and then you make a couple of choices along the way.
Yeah, we actually had one of those novels last year for no, it was like I think it was 3 years ago for a review. We got a review code and we were doing a review for YouTube, and I was like, I'm not sure if that is my type of game. And Martin, who was with me on this review, he was like, "Oh, I would totally buy this. This is very enjoyable." I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
so you are the type of customer then, you know." I don't know. It's just some concepts that I remember from the 80s or 90s that kind of failed and then you forgot about it. But there's still a niche where people are like, I like this
Yeah.
kind of stuff, you know. Yeah. Interesting.
Usually always a niche for some people.
True.
It's just it's kind of surprising how many different like little niche things that there are. I mean, I was watching, this is completely off topic, but there's a there was a Disney Plus show I was watching a long time ago, and it had Jeff Goldblum. Uh, I forget what it was called, but basically he's an actor who he was exploring various hobbies that people like had a randomly huge community around, and one of them was like sneakers. And there's this huge artistic community around sneakers. People were like trading sneakers, and they were like they had like thousands of dollars for like just one pair of sneakers and stuff, and like doing all kinds of they're like, oh, they were like getting super in depth, like this brand and fabric and material and like all this other stuff. And he was just going through and like talking to people and asking them questions, and it was like, wow, there's a lot of people really into their shoes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm if they get me from point A to point B, I'm cool. If they're comfortable, I'm cool. But some people really get into that stuff.
I wouldn't spend thousands of dollars for my footwear. Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah.
So I was, that kind of stuff was pretty fascinating. And he did some other videos as well, just like, or other episodes of the show. I forget what it's called, but
I have to look that up. That sounds interesting. I actually have Disney Plus. They started it here in Germany last December. Well, I only got it for 2 reasons: Star Wars and Simpsons. Yeah. So.
The World According to Jeff Goldblum, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. I have to look that up. Thanks a lot.
Check that out. It's lots of just it's just completely random stuff that you might not even expect to have some kind of, actual like community and stuff around. Like I knew people were into sneakers. Like I knew that those kinds of people were out there, but I had no idea they were like, going to like sneaker conventions and like doing backyard trade deals for thousands of dollars to get like these crazy high end.
I saw once sneakers. A report about that. Super crazy. Yeah. And even saw one person investing in it, taking a credit so he can buy the expensive sneakers and put them as an investment. And like, holy cow, an investment into shoes,
Yep.
Totally get that. All right.
Yeah. Did you have any last questions for the
No, I'm
for the
just
actual
trying.
topic I was supposed to
No,
talk about?
no. Actually trying to not fall asleep because I'm hitting almost 1 a.m. over here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've time zones.
No problem. It's Friday night. Who cares?
Yeah.
I once did an interview about Space Taxi at 3 a.m. Yeah, yeah, because that was the only time the other person had time. I was like, okay, 3 a.m. is kind of late, but
Yeah.
but I was like, okay, let's do it. Right. Well, before I let you go, we have this thing that we ask our guests, and also you. Where can people find your stuff?
Well, I have Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter handles, all slash Rhakimndar, Rhakimdar. I'm mostly active on YouTube, but I'm occasionally browsing the others, and I occasionally throw out the stream. Currently, I'm working on Resident Evil 4 speedrunning and a guide for Resident Evil 4 S plus ranking on professional difficulty, which is like the hardest achievement, one of the hardest achievements you can get in the game. So really trying to put in the work to learn the game in and out so that I can do a high quality guide for that. And while I'm doing that, I'm learning the speedrun on my Twitch. So if you're interested in RE4 speedrunning, then you can come check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and then
I'm
I'm also
really
gonna
glad.
also some plans for Zelda eventually once I get done no lifing the game. See how that goes. So yeah.
Wow. So was nice nerding out with you. Thanks for
Yeah, for
taking the
sure.
time. Yeah.
No problem. Kind of got off
Right.
topic, but I think it was a good time.
Derailing is what happens sometimes, right? Yeah. So talk to you then.
All right, yeah.
Awesome.
Have a great evening or night.
You too.